What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic, and even though Epic Universe has just barely been open a month, a lot of people, myself included, have already been speculating on what expansions could be coming to Epic Universe, and one of the main ones that you will hear out there is Super Nintendo World, and there is some debate about whether that would be Luigi's Mansion or perhaps the long-rumored Zelda. And on a recent live stream with some of the Orange 55 guys, we had a really good discussion about what this might look like, and also potentially there's a new ride concept out there that could be making its way to Dark Universe as part of an expansion there. So it's a really good discussion about some things that could be coming to Epic Universe as this park will continue to grow and expand its offerings. So we'll just get right into the discussion on this and what we think might be heading to Epic Universe.
Because I was talking to some people while I was actually down at Epic, and they said it's not officially confirmed, but there's a lot of chatter that they're already in the works of making Luigi's Mansion.
I've heard that as well. I'm kind of torn on what it would be because obviously I think Zelda stuff in that gift shop.
Yeah,
it seems to me that that's pointing to something. I did a video last week on Steve Tatham, who is the creative head director of Epic Universe. I can't remember the outlet, but they interviewed him and asked him directly about it. And he basically just said no comment and then said, maybe don't read too much into it. Like, he didn't deny it, but he also didn't say it was coming.
But do you think that of how big of scope that Zelda is, and they're already starting the process of casting for the film? They're already looking for people to play Zelda and Link. Do you think even that kind of plot of land is kind of not good enough for Zelda in a sense? Like, do you even think that it could? I mean, I could see how it would connect into Super Nintendo World because you're then calling it Nintendo World. If you just have the Mario IP, then you might as well should have just called it Super Mario Brothers, But for something on the caliber of Zelda, I would think they would want to utilize much more land than just that.
I would personally, and I know this might, I have OCD, so it does trigger me a little bit, but I would rather, if you can get more land outside of that spot in the park, and if it's separate from like the main Nintendo world, but we can do a more proper Zelda area with more space, I think I'd rather do that. I'd rather do it right and have the room to kind of breathe. I agree with George. I think that land is a little, for Zelda, is a little small.
How big is the Lost Continent? I was just trying to look that up. I want to say it's around 10 acres. That's in Islands of Adventure. Because a lot of the people are talking about, that was the original rumor that Zelda would go into Lost Continent over the islands, but a lot of people were talking about how that wasn't probably big enough, but I can't find. So if that's roughly the size of Lost Continent, I guess it would just depend on how aggressive they want to be with it. I mean, looking at this here, it's roughly, I don't know. It'd be on how they do it and really what they're playing. And really, I wonder if Zelda is sort of still in the pipeline for sure, given Sony's making that movie and it's going to be live action, and maybe Universal's taking a wait and see approach with it. Because I think everybody assumed it was going to be Illumination making it like they did the Mario Brothers movie, and it would be like an animated thing. And so then now the fact that it's going to be live action and it's going to be its whole trilogy, maybe they're sort of putting that on pause, maybe. But the only thing I've ever heard is Luigi's Mansion was in some sort of planning phase of it. That was the next thing, but that was before Epic opened. And then I just don't know where the Zelda stuff is. I don't know how much. I haven't heard anything real strong rumor wise about if that's still something they're planning on doing or where the status of it is.
Let me ask you guys this, and I think this seems pretty fair, because I do think that they have an option A and an option B depending on how the movie performs. Because the video game series by itself doesn't have the pool revenue-wise to justify a massive land by itself. It's not as big as Mario. It's not even close.
Right.
It has a fan base, don't get me wrong, but it's not Super Mario fan base. Plus, they haven't proven themselves financially in the theater. So I think that they're waiting to see how this movie does. If the movie does well, I think you might see it come to the Lost Continent, where they have more expansion to play. But if it doesn't do well, I think they're going to base it off of the video game and put it into the 7-acre expansion area next to Super Nintendo World.
I could see that. I could see that because that explains why they're even still keeping Lost Continent even to right now. Literally, I actually enjoyed the Lost Continent. I think it's a shame that we lost Sinbad and Poseidon, but you know, it is what it is. I still love Mythos. I still love the aesthetics of that land, but the fact that it's a whole entire land with just basically a restaurant holding it up, I don't think Universal is just leaving that just to say, oh, because Mythos is popular. But to your point, Slammer, I could see where they would leave it up until the fact of waiting to see how people react to Zelda as a film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do know internally they did have worries about Zelda being enough of a draw on its own. Like, because it, like you were saying, Slimer, like it's popular, but it's also Nintendo, and it's a niche of even Nintendo a bit. And I think they were always worried about this. If they put it in on its own, say in Lost Continent, is Zelda a big enough property to really pull people in there?
Yeah.
And I see the reasoning where you'd put it in Super Nintendo World because it's part of a greater Nintendo offering, and it's just another thing in there. But I do, if I were to guess, I do think that movie has maybe, like Slimer said, waiting until seeing how that does. If it's a huge success, then it's a no-brainer almost to bring it in, even though they would probably do, I would assume they would do the video game version if they were to do it and not the live-action version, just because of the way Super Nintendo World is set up. If they did it in there, but if they did Lost Continent, they probably might, maybe depending on how good that movie is, maybe do that live-action version, but then they would probably have to work with Sony a bit on that.
Now, you guys
do that, and if they do that, the perfect title for that video game is Zelda, the video game inspired by the movie, inspired by the video game.
Well, George, to be fair, Disney doesn't own Universal, so that's not going to happen.
Now, for you guys that have seen the live action remake, and I don't want to get into the movie too much because I know we got a lot to cover here with theme parks, but you guys seen it. You guys have also both been to How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk. Mm-hmm. Is the movie an Isle of Berk? Is it interchangeable with the animated movie? Like, are they both interchangeable? Like, if you've never seen the live action,
yeah,
and all right, you understand my. Then that's what they should do with the Zelda. Like, whether the movie bombs or whether it's a massive success, they should make it a bridge between the video games. All the obviously you'd have to pick probably one of the more titular video games that ever came out, because you can't base it off of all of them, because stylistically there's such a variation. Like if you look at Wind Waker and then Ocarina, and then you look at another one, stylistically they're all different. But yeah, if they can just pick something and make it stylistically a bridge between that and whatever they decide to do with the movie, that'd be the best way to go. So that way, they're just playing both sides.
Like I wonder if they did the live action, though, would they have to? I mean, obviously, you're going to have an agreement with Nintendo. Would they also then have to have an agreement with Sony as well?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jared.
That would potentially be a hiccup if you had to have two different licensing agreements and you'd have to give up profits off of that.
But Jared, you bring up a great point. If I'm Universal, right? And I'm licensing this stuff out, do I want to deal with two different companies, Nintendo and Sony now?
Right.
I'd rather just do the video game version and deal with Nintendo. I already have the relationship with Nintendo.
Yep.
Why not just do that? I think that's a great point. I think that will definitely, detour Universal from trying to do that live action.
It's not even just Universal, like having to deal with Nintendo and then having to deal with Sony, but it's also, could there be even a clash with Nintendo and Sony on creative differences of like how it is used? Because I mean, you could already kind of see for Super Nintendo, they kind of are a little bit more of a stickler when it comes to like what is going into the parks for the representation of their brand, so and then you put, you're right. And if you put Sony into the mix, and then there's Universal stuck in the middle.
Right. Well, and I think if the live action movie is really popular, say it is a massive hit, it's going to put a lot of attention on the video game too. So it wouldn't be a loss if you did the video game version in here. I think there would be crossover or spillover to that if they did it. Personally speaking, at this point, I think Luigi's Mansion is a really cool concept.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's the Nintendo brand, but yet you're kind of borrowing a little bit from like Haunted Mansion. It'll be interactive. I think there's so much you can do with that. Like I said before, I think we talked about it actually in the last theme park, and where it was like, Tokyo Disney has a Monsters Inc. ride with flashlights. And
that's right. Yeah.
Right. I could see Luigi's Mansion using similar technology like that. And I think it'd be a lot of fun for families.
I spoke to several people, and as I said, it's like not official from Universal, but from the people who are down there, they said it's pretty much a done deal with Luigi. Now, whether it's going in this plot or not, that's why I assumed it was for that, because when it said it was adjacent to Super Nintendo World, I thought, well, that's probably for Luigi's.
It's just, I think the only thing, like, I lean logically, I think Luigi makes the most sense. The only thing that throws it for me at all or puts me maybe hesitate is just that shop that has all that Zelda stuff. That's the thing where I'm just like,
yeah,
like, it'd be one thing in there if they had like Pikmin and they had other characters that were not in Super Nintendo World, but Zelda is literally the only character.
Do you think that's kind of like a beta test, though, to actually see even how much the merch can sell?
It could be. It could, I mean, I think that's what they do with, like, say, Back to the Future and Ghostbusters with merchandise. See how that moves.
It could be, but the thing is, it's beyond the merch, though. Even like they have like the stained glass windows with Zelda.
They have it on the floor. It's on the walls, on the floor, and the seat. Like, it's everywhere. Yeah. And then they added. They didn't have merch for Zelda, but now they do.
Maybe that's the attraction. Hey, come down and see Zelda, the stained glass windows.
It could be. Maybe they make it a cathedral of Nintendo or something. But,
yeah, it seems like they've made their mind up with like it's going into Epic. Now, I mean, that's just our assumption, I guess, based on what we're seeing. But I mean, you're right, though. It seems like they're sort of heavily hinting that this is part of this park eventually.
But do you think then Zelda, would they want to connect it to Super Nintendo, or would they just kind of make it its own?
That's the thing.
I mean, Zelda's pretty synonymous. I mean, if you think about it, they got Donkey Kong in there. I mean, Zelda is very synonymous with Nintendo. I think it would make sense if they put it in there with it, made it its own world. But I think at the same time, if you look at the map, they probably have room to give it maybe its own portal, maybe. Or maybe you just access it through Super Nintendo World only.
The thing with Zelda is that it's such a vast, like, no pun intended, but epic franchise. It's big. I think when I think Zelda. I think like Lord of the Rings style. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Mm-hmm. So it's tough to cram that into like, and stylistically, it's so much different than Donkey Kong and Mario.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, which one, like you guys were saying, which one do you choose? Because there's so many different versions of Zelda that it's like you got to pick one. And like, obviously you're not going to go the 8-bit version, but like, do you do tiers, whichever one you use, you got to kind of pick one and just stick with it.
Now you said the expansion pad, you said it was adjacent to Minecart.
Yeah. So if you look on this, if you can see my cursor, like, so when you walk in Donkey Kong Country on the right, so it would be that plot. I think the expansion is basically adjacent to Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Country.
Okay. So now that's still, I don't know, it really wouldn't make sense if they did it for Luigi's Mansion, because then you would go from Super Mario World, so to speak, then you would move into the transition of Donkey Kong, but then you would have Luigi's kind of standing alone when it really would fit into Mario.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
John David now said, will Luigi's Mansion be a copy of Mario Kart minus the cart?
And I don't think so.
I don't think they would do the same thing.
Nah.
There's a lot of possibilities you could do with it.
If anything, I'd probably take the best aspects. And George, you're probably going to be like, "What best aspects?" I'd probably take the best aspects of Minion Mayhem and figure out a way to make that work with the Luigi's Mansion. Because if it's going to be a shooter style ride with like portable vacuum suckers, okay. Obviously, you want Luigi's Mansion to be based off of a video game, so it's gonna be very video game-ish, like Mario Kart. So it's gonna be like you're in the video game. So they're gonna have to figure out a way to create holographic ghosts, make your gun, whatever you want to call it, shake when you suck it in. It's gonna have the effect of being sucked into your ghost. So they would have to modernize that technology while you're riding through a conveyor belt through a haunted house. And make it so that it's 10 times better than Minion Mayhem. That's essentially how I would picture, because you're not going to be in a vehicle. I think that's too like sit down shooters. They have Men in Black. I mean, it could work, but the problem is like conceptually, it's not Luigi's Mansion. Like, he never is in a vehicle catching ghosts. You're walking around getting scared. That's like, it's the whole Scooby-Doo thing,
Right?
So you'd have to be walking somewhere, and I think Minion Mayhem as a vehicle ride system platform would probably be the best way to do it. They would just have to figure out a way to do it a lot better.
Well, like Remy D said, just don't hire the creatives who made Villain Con Minion Blast to make Luigi's Mansion.
Thank you. Yeah, 100% Remy D. 100%.
I feel like Villain Con, there was like, here's your budget and figure it out. Because it was like in that period they were still building Epic, and it was like DreamWorks Land and that expansion. I mean, they were still expansions and they redid the areas, but I think they were very limited on their budget. And I think those areas kind of show that a little bit.
And that's what I meant to say. VillainCon, yeah, that one.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, FizzGig says, so I do have some inside info, not 100% it's true or not, but I did work at Universal, and what I was told was Luigi's Mansion is for sure, but will be on the other side of Nintendo World.
Well, one thing I did want to bring up too, in terms of people's concerns about like a Luigi's attraction being kind of like whack, like the Minion thing. And this is the same thing I say about Avatar at DCA. It's a licensing agreement, and Nintendo is a company that's a stickler for quality.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. You won't see a VillainCon quality thing with Nintendo. You know, I think they're going to demand better. So that's good, I think. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do agree. I don't think they would go that level. I think it would be much more high budget. Like, and again, I think whatever it is, it's going to have to be indoors, because one thing this park needs is indoor stuff.
100%.
That, but like a big e-ticket Battle of the Ministry level ride in Super Nintendo World, I think would be awesome. And I mean, you potentially could do that with Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah,
see,
or Zelda.
That would be like, see, and that's the thing that frustrates me with like Mario Kart, like as you had mentioned, like with the queue and the exterior and everything. I actually find that amazing. Like, I think, and I feel like that the ride doesn't do all that justice. Usually it's like vice versa. It's almost like when someone says to you, oh, I got you a date with like a big time celebrity. And you're like thinking, oh man, like who could it be? Like you're thinking like, is it like Jessica Alba or something? I'm just like throwing things off. You show up and it's Barbara Streisand. You know, it's like when you have like that moment where you think,
she's hot,
oh
bro.
gosh,
What are you talking about? She's hot, dude. What are you talking about?
I was thinking in my head, Pauly Shore. That'd be a little bit of like, oh my god,
Pauly Shore.
And, hey, D, and you're like, oh no,
no, the juice.
I like the analogy though. I mean, I get it. Like it's kind of like Yoshi. Like Yoshi, unless you have a kid, there's like no really reason to ride it. I mean, it's just it's a whatever ride. But
the original map that it was showing, like the color coded everything, and if you look south of that area, that whole big plot of land for basically a new portal, what would you guys think that would be for?
Oh, the 20 acres.
Yeah. Yeah, the 20
oh.
That's a tough one. I mean, because if they have a willingness, to separate Zelda from the Nintendo area, it could be Zelda. I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't know. I think for Epic, I would love to see Lord of the Rings. I think that'd be so incredible over there.
Yeah,
you know, something like that would be really, really cool. But
that's
I agree with you, OG. I think Lord of the Rings is what I'd put here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly. I think it's a really good question what they might put there. I mean, Lord of the Rings, but would Lord of the Rings make more sense in Islands of Adventure?
Yeah, because it's based off of a novel, and
right.
they could put Wicked down there because Wicked still has that sequel coming out. So
yeah,
that's expected to do banger numbers.
I mean, personally, I hope it's not Wicked, but I would get it if they did it. Personally, yeah. I would understand it. So the rumor here, this from Attraction Magazine, is Mack Rides has a new ride system. It's a boat attached to an underwater chassis, and it could change the future of theme parks after debuting at Future Scope in France, but it's also rumored to be coming to Epic Universe. So basically, it is almost like a whitewater rafting type of ride, but you never leave the track, and it has it brings it up into the water and back down. So the
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Creature from the Black Lagoon would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, dude,
that's dope. That's dope. And that's a franchise like that. That's cool. That I like when Universal does that. I like when they lean into their in-house IP, and not just their in-house IP, but Monsters. The Monster movie built the whole studio. So I love that they're leaning into what makes Universal Universal. You know what I'm saying? So a great franchise, perfect ride system.
And, that makes sense because he's the least featured monster in the ride. He's kind of like hinted at. I mean, like you see him once and boom, he's gone. Every other monster is featured throughout the ride system. So, and then remember, he comes out, like when they announce him, when you see him, it's like, oh, he got loose.
Right.
So it's a storyline they set up for another ride.
100%.
Well, the park could also use a water ride too. Like, I mean, they have Fire Drill, but it could use like an actual ride that, I don't know what, like I'm trying to see the background of this video. It looks like it's got it's kind of like a coaster / water ride. Like that's a cool concept in general. Like you could be coming out of Darkmoor or do something that you could have some story involved where you end up in the water and then he, jumps out at different places and stuff like that.
It's dope.
It's like a modern take on the Jungle Cruise, kind of.
It kind of is. So I feel like that was a really good discussion on some of the things that could come in and kind of the wrinkles and talking about a Zelda land coming, whether that would be based on live action or the video game version, or maybe it's Luigi's Mansion, whatever it is. I think there's lots of options. Of course, it's always fun to just talk about rumors about things that could be coming, and really enjoyed it. So I hope you like that discussion. We do those live streams on this channel called Theme Park, and about every 2 weeks, the Orange Grove 55 guys come on and have always a good time, some good discussions there. So be sure to be on the lookout for those live streams. But by the way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, do you think a Luigi expansion to Super Nintendo World would happen, or a Zelda one, or something we're not even talking about at this point? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.